The words slipped from Mia Bennett's lips before she could stop them. They hung in the crisp autumn air between her and the handsome stranger, whose steel blue eyes widened at her sudden boldness. "Kiss me like you mean it," she repeated, her voice steadier than she felt. The noisy Manhattan intersection faded around them, the morning commuters blurring into the background. 20 minutes earlier, Mia had been rushing toward her first day at Everest Media, Manhattan's fastest-growing digital marketing firm. Her portfolio clutched tightly against her chest. She'd rehearsed her introduction to the notoriously demanding CEO, Richard Hayes. After years of freelancing, this position as creative director represented everything she'd worked toward: stability, recognition, and the chance to finally prove herself in an industry that had repeatedly underestimated her. Then coffee had spilled down her carefully selected cream blouse when someone bumped into her. Not just any coffee, scalding hot, triple-shot espresso from the corner vendor, whose brew she'd hoped would calm her first-day nerves. Now, as she frantically dabbed at the spreading stain with a handful of napkins, tears of frustration threatened to ruin her meticulously applied makeup. "Here," a deep voice had said, offering a pristine white handkerchief. "Soda water and a touch of salt will take that right out." When Mia looked up, time seemed to slow. The stranger wore no tie, his collar open at the neck, revealing a hint of tanned skin. His dark hair was slightly windswept, and a 5 o'clock shadow emphasized a jawline that belonged on a magazine cover. But it was his eyes, somehow both intense and kind, that made her forget the disaster unfolding on her blouse. "I'm already late," she'd explained, accepting his handkerchief nonetheless. "First day, new job, important meeting, and now—" She gestured helplessly at the stain. "First days are overrated," he'd replied with a smile that created a dimple in his left cheek. "I skipped mine entirely." Despite everything, Mia laughed. Must be nice having that kind of freedom. "Freedom comes with its own complications," he'd said cryptically before guiding her toward a nearby department store. "Come on, 10 minutes, and you'll be presentable again. I promise." She should have refused, should have continued her frantic journey toward Everest Media's glass tower. Yet something about this stranger, his quiet confidence perhaps, or the way he seemed genuinely concerned about her predicament, made Mia follow him. Inside the store, he'd navigated directly to women's businesswear, selecting a silk blouse in almost the exact shade of cream as her ruined one. "This should work," he'd said, handing it to her without checking the price tag in a way that suggested money wasn't a concern. When she'd emerged from the fitting room, transformed, he'd smiled approvingly. "Perfect," he'd said, and the warmth in his voice made something flutter in her chest. "What's this important meeting about anyway?" "I'm meeting my new boss, supposedly some brilliant but intimidating businessman who built a media empire from nothing." She adjusted the collar of her new blouse. "People say he's impossible to please." "Sounds like a real tyrant," he'd replied, amusement dancing in his eyes. "Maybe you should reconsider." "Not a chance. I've worked too hard to get here." Mia had checked her watch and gasped. "I really have to go. Thank you so much for—" She gestured at the blouse, suddenly realizing she had no way to repay this unexpected kindness. "No need to thank me," he'd said, walking her back outside. "Just promise you'll knock 'em dead today." Perhaps it was his quiet confidence, or the lingering adrenaline from her morning crisis, but as they'd reached the crosswalk, Mia felt a surge of boldness. This handsome stranger, this fleeting connection amid the city's chaos, represented everything she wasn't. Spontaneous, carefree, unbound by the need to constantly prove herself. And so the words had tumbled out, surprising them both. "Kiss me like you mean it." Now, watching his shocked expression transform into something unreadable, Mia instantly regretted her impulsiveness. "I'm sorry, that was completely inappropriate. I don't know what came over me. It's just been a crazy morning, and you've been so kind and—" His laugh interrupted her rambling apology. "You certainly don't do things halfway, do you?" Heat flooded her cheeks. "Usually I'm much more professional, I swear. I've just never been good at accepting help without giving something in return, and I thought— Well, I don't know what I thought." The crosswalk signal changed, and the crowd surged forward, but they remained still, an island in the human current. His expression softened as he studied her face. "Tell you what," he said finally, "let's make a deal. If you still want that kiss after your first day, find me at the Meridian rooftop bar at 7 tonight." Before Mia could respond, he stepped back with a smile that promised complications. "Good luck with the tyrant boss," he called over his shoulder as he merged into the crowd, leaving her breathless and bewildered on the corner. 15 minutes later, Mia stood in the impressive lobby of Everest Media, her thoughts still tangled around the stranger and her moment of madness. The receptionist's voice jolted her back to reality. "Ms. Bennett? They're waiting for you in the conference room." Mia swallowed hard, straightening her new blouse and gathering her portfolio. "Thank you, I'm ready." The executive floor buzzed with activity as the receptionist led her through a maze of glass-walled offices. Conversations paused as she passed, curious gazes following her progress. By the time they reached the conference room door, Mia's momentary confidence had been replaced by the familiar weight of anxiety. "Just breathe," she whispered to herself, then stepped into the room where 6 impeccably dressed executives sat around a polished table. Their expressions ranged from polite interest to barely concealed impatience. "Ms. Bennett, welcome to Everest," said an elegant woman with a sleek silver bob. "I'm Vivian Montgomery, VP of Operations. Please, have a seat. We were just discussing the quarterly projections." Mia settled into the indicated chair, noting the empty seat at the head of the table. "Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Montgomery. I apologize for my tardiness. There was an incident with coffee." Vivian's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "Richard texted that you might be slightly delayed. No matter. He's running late himself, which is unusual." She glanced toward the door. "He should be joining us momentarily." The meeting proceeded with introductions and preliminary discussions of Everest's current projects. Mia contributed where appropriate, grateful that her professional knowledge remained intact despite the morning's chaos. Still, she couldn't help glancing repeatedly at the door, her stomach tightening with each passing minute. First impressions mattered, and being late to meet the CEO, regardless of the circumstances, wasn't the start she'd hoped for. When the door finally opened, Mia rose with the others, portfolio ready, professional smile in place. Then her carefully constructed composure shattered completely. Standing in the doorway, now wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit and crisp blue tie, was the stranger from the crosswalk. His eyes locked with hers across the conference room, that same dimpled smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "Good morning, everyone," he said, his gaze never leaving Mia's face. "I see you've all met our new creative director." Vivian nodded. "Yes, Richard." Ms. Bennett was just about to share some of her portfolio concepts. Richard Hayes, Billionaire CEO, supposed tyrant, and the man she'd just propositioned at a crosswalk, slid into the chair at the head of the table. "Excellent," he said, leaning forward with undisguised interest. "I'm particularly eager to see what Ms. Bennett brings to the table. I have a feeling she's full of surprises." As the blood drained from her face, Mia realized with perfect clarity that her career at Everest Media had just begun in the most catastrophically unprofessional way possible, by accidentally propositioning her new boss. The 3 hours that followed ranked among the most excruciating of Mia's professional life. She managed to present her portfolio with remarkable composure given the circumstances, her voice steady, even as her mind replayed that mortifying moment at the crosswalk on an endless loop. Through it all, Richard Hayes remained the consummate professional, asking insightful questions about her design philosophy and previous work without the slightest hint that anything unusual had transpired between them. Only the occasional glint in his eyes, a flash of something that might have been amusement or challenge, betrayed any awareness of their earlier encounter. By the time the meeting concluded, Mia had almost convinced herself that he intended to pretend it never happened, a mercy, perhaps, or simply good business sense. "Impressive work, everyone," Richard said, rising from his chair. "Ms. Bennett, if you have a moment, I'd like to discuss your onboarding schedule." The other executives filed out, leaving Mia alone with the man she'd brazenly asked to kiss her mere hours ago. The conference room suddenly felt both too large and insufferably small. "Mr. Hayes," she began once the door closed, "about this morning—" "Richard," he corrected, loosening his tie with one finger. "And before you continue, I should mention that I don't discuss personal matters in the office." His expression remained unreadable. "Vivian will show you to your department. The team's eager to meet you." With that dismissal still hanging in the air, he strode from the room, leaving Mia to wonder if she'd imagined the brief pressure of his hand on her shoulder as he passed. Her new office, a corner space with windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, should have thrilled her. Instead, as Vivian completed the tour and left her to settle in, Mia sank into her ergonomic chair and covered her face with her hands. "Knock, knock," came a cheerful voice from the doorway. "Welcome wagon delivery." Mia looked up to find a woman approximately her age, balancing 2 coffee cups and a pastry bag. Her curly auburn hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her freckled face wore an expression of friendly curiosity. "I'm Grace Winters, digital content manager and your new office neighbor," she said, placing one of the coffees on Mia's desk. "Fair warning, I've brought bribery caffeine because I need dirt on your meeting with the big boss." Despite everything, Mia found herself laughing. "That obvious, huh?" Grace perched on the edge of the desk. "Honey, the entire creative department has been taking bets on whether you'd survive the Haze Gauntlet. Most newcomers leave their first encounter looking shell-shocked, but you're remarkably intact." "Appearances can be deceiving," Mia murmured, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Spill," Grace commanded, breaking a croissant in half and offering the larger portion. "What's he like one-on-one? Still doing that intimidating silent stare thing?" Mia hesitated, weighing her response. "He wasn't what I expected," she admitted finally. "Different from the reputation." Grace's eyebrows shot up. "Interesting. Care to elaborate?" "Not particularly." Mia sipped her coffee, hoping to change the subject. "Tell me about the team instead." The redhead studied her thoughtfully before acquiescing. "Fair enough. You'll meet everyone officially this afternoon, but the Cliff Notes version is talented group slightly overworked, desperately in need of fresh leadership." She gestured toward Mia with her coffee cup. "That's where you come in. The last creative director was more interested in pleasing Hayes than pushing boundaries. And that didn't work. Got him a corner office in our Chicago branch, actually," Grace admitted with a grimace. "But the department suffered. We need someone who stands their ground, not another yes-man." Mia thought of the handkerchief, the department store, the unexpected kindness from a man reputed to be ruthlessly demanding. "He doesn't strike me as someone who surrounds himself with sycophants." "That's just it." Grace leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Nobody really knows him. 5 years building this company from nothing, featured in every business magazine worth reading, and still somehow manages to keep his personal life completely private." She brushed croissant crumbs from her skirt. "The official story is classic rags to riches. Brilliant college dropout builds revolutionary algorithm, secures venture capital, transforms digital marketing landscape. And the unofficial story," Grace grinned, "that's where it gets interesting. Rumors range from secretly royalty to former black ops. The only facts anyone's confirmed are that he grew up somewhere in the Midwest, never married, and donates ridiculous amounts to literacy programs." Before Mia could probe further, her phone chimed with a calendar notification. "Department meeting in 10 minutes, she read aloud. "Perfect timing," Grace said, hopping off the desk. "Ready to meet your minions?" The afternoon passed in a whirlwind of introductions, project briefings, and bureaucratic necessities. By 5 o'clock, Mia had met her entire 14-person team, reviewed 3 major campaigns in development, and signed enough paperwork to give her a hand cramp. Richard Hayes made no further appearances, though his presence loomed over every conversation. She was just packing up her things when Vivian appeared at her door. "Richard asked me to give you this," the older woman said, handing over a sleek folder embossed with the company logo. "He wants your input on the Preston Hotel's pitch by tomorrow morning." Mia accepted the folder, noting its substantial weight. "Of course. I'll review it tonight." Vivian lingered, her professional demeanor softening slightly. "It's unusual, you know." "What is?" "Richard giving a new hire direct input on our biggest prospective client." She studied Mia with newfound interest. "He must see something special in your work." After Vivian departed, Mia opened the folder to find not only the Preston Hotel's materials, but also a handwritten note on Everest letterhead. "The offer still stands. 7 p.m. R." Her pulse quickened as she recalled his parting words at the crosswalk. "If you still want that kiss after your first day, find me at the Meridian Rooftop Bar at 7 tonight." The sensible choice was obvious. Go home, review the Preston pitch, establish professional boundaries from the start. Office romances rarely ended well, and this particular complication could jeopardize the career she'd worked so hard to build. Yet as Mia stared at the bold, confident handwriting, she couldn't ignore the persistent tug of curiosity. What kind of CEO bought strange women new blouses and offered them handkerchiefs? What was behind that carefully maintained public persona? And why, despite every professional instinct warning against it, did she still want to discover how Richard Hayes might kiss if he truly meant it? At 6:55 p.m., Mia stepped off the elevator onto the Meridian's rooftop level, her decision made. She'd changed into a simple black dress she kept in her office for after-work events, applied fresh lipstick, and liberated her hair from its professional updo. The maitre d' escorted her past candlelit tables to a secluded corner where Richard stood at the balcony rail, silhouetted against Manhattan's glittering skyline. He turned at her approach, his expression warming as he took in her appearance. "You came." "Apparently I make questionable decisions with remarkable consistency," Mia replied, joining him at the rail. "Though in my defense, when I propositioned you this morning, I didn't know you were my boss." "Would it have mattered?" The directness of his question caught her off guard. Mia considered this. "Probably. I tend to keep my professional and personal lives strictly separated. And now I'm breaking my own rules, clearly." She gestured toward the skyline. "Nice view. Do you bring all your new employees here?" "Just the ones who asked me to kiss them before knowing my name." The amusement in his voice took any sting from the words. "I ordered champagne. I hope that's acceptable." "Celebration seems premature, given the potential HR nightmare we're creating," Mia observed dryly. Richard's laugh was unexpectedly rich. "I like you, Mia Bennett. That's rare enough to merit champagne." A server appeared with the promised bottle and 2 flutes. Once they were alone again, Richard raised his glass. To breaking rules, occasionally and selectively. Mia clinked her glass against his. To professional boundaries and the complex ethics of office romances. "Always so careful," he murmured, his eyes never leaving hers as they both drank. "I'm curious. What made you say those words this morning? You don't strike me as impulsive." The champagne's effervescence matched the strange lightness in her chest. "I'm not, usually, but there was something about that moment." She paused, searching for the right words. "For years I've calculated every career move, every professional risk. This morning when you helped me, a stranger, without expecting anything in return, it reminded me that not everything needs to be a transaction. So you decided to proposition me?" "I decided to do something completely uncharacteristic," Mia corrected. "Something with no strategic value or professional calculation. Just pure impulse." Richard studied her for a long moment. "And now that you know who I am." "Now I know it was a terrible idea." She set her glass down decisively. "Mr. Hayes, Richard, I value this opportunity at Everest Media too much to complicate it. What I did this morning was inappropriate, regardless of the circumstances." "I see." His expression revealed nothing as he moved slightly closer. "And if I told you I haven't stopped thinking about your proposition all day? That I found your boldness refreshing in a world where people primarily want things from me?" Mia swallowed hard. "I'd say that's precisely why we should keep our relationship strictly professional." "Always so careful," Richard repeated softly. His fingers brushed hers on the railing, the contact sending an electric current up her arm. What if just once we weren't? The champagne, the city lights, the dangerous proximity, everything conspired against Mia's better judgment. As Richard leaned incrementally closer, she found herself unable to step away. "This is a mistake," she whispered, even as her eyes dropped to his lips. "Probably," he agreed, his voice equally low, "but sometimes the best decisions look like mistakes at first glance." His hand came up to cup her cheek, and Mia knew with perfect clarity that whatever happened next would irreversibly alter the path she'd so carefully charted for herself. Their lips never met. Just as Richard leaned forward, his phone erupted with an insistent ringtone. His expression shifted instantly from intimate to professional as he checked the screen. "I need to take this," he said, stepping back. "Excuse me." The interruption broke whatever spell had momentarily clouded Mia's judgment. As Richard moved away to answer his call, she pressed cool fingers to her flushed cheeks, silently berating herself for nearly crossing a line she'd promised herself to respect. He returned minutes later, his earlier warmth replaced by apologetic professionalism. "I'm sorry, but I need to handle an urgent situation with our London office," he explained, reaching for his jacket. "Rain check?" The disappointment that flashed through her surprised Mia with its intensity. "Actually, this interruption is probably for the best," she said, gathering her purse. "We both know this would be complicated." Richard paused, his gaze searching her face. "Complicated doesn't always mean wrong, Mia." "In this case, I think it does," she replied softly. "I've worked too hard to be taken seriously in this industry. The last thing I need is rumors that I slept my way into a director position." His expression hardened, almost imperceptibly. "Is that what you think would happen?" "It doesn't matter what I think. Perception creates reality in corporate environments, and you know it." Mia straightened her shoulders. I'll have my notes on the Preston pitch to you first thing tomorrow. Before he could respond, she turned and walked toward the elevator, feeling his eyes on her back with every step. Only when the doors closed between them did she release the breath she'd been holding. The following week established a rhythm that was equal parts challenging and exhilarating. By day, Mia threw herself into revitalizing Everest's creative department, implementing new workflows and encouraging her team to push boundaries they'd previously avoided. By night, she worked relentlessly on the Preston Hotels campaign, determined to prove her value through results rather than personal connections. Richard maintained a scrupulously professional distance, their interactions limited to formal meetings, where others were always present. If their colleagues noticed any tension, they attributed it to the high-stakes Preston pitch, which had become Everest's top priority. "The client's arriving tomorrow," Grace informed Mia as they reviewed presentation materials late Wednesday evening. "Word is they've already turned down proposals from 3 top agencies." Mia nodded, making a final adjustment to the mock-up displayed on her tablet. "Then we'll just have to wow them with something those agencies couldn't offer." "Confidence. I like it," Grace said with a grin. "Though between us, Hayes has been unusually hands-on with this one. He typically leaves creative direction to the department. He's the CEO. Everything ultimately requires his approval." "True, but he's never attended every single planning meeting before." Grace gave her a sidelong glance. "You must have made quite an impression." Before Mia could formulate a suitably neutral response, Vivian appeared in the doorway. "Mia, do you have a moment? Richard would like to speak with you before tomorrow's presentation." Grace raised her eyebrows meaningfully as Mia gathered her materials. "Good luck," she whispered. "Remember, eye contact and no backing down. That's how you handle the big boss." Mia found Richard in his corner office, suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up as he studied figures on multiple screens. The setting sun cast amber light across the space, softening the room's otherwise stark modernity. He looked up when she entered, fatigue evident in the lines around his eyes. "You wanted to see me?" she asked, remaining near the door. "Come in, please. Close the door." He gestured toward the chair opposite his desk. "How confident are you about tomorrow's presentation?" Mia sat, placing her tablet on his desk. "Very. The team's done exceptional work, and the concept addresses Preston's specific concerns while differentiating them in the luxury market." Richard nodded, his expression betraying nothing. "Preston's CEO, James Harrington, is notoriously difficult to impress. He's bringing his daughter, Amanda, who's being groomed to take over the company eventually." "I've done my research," Mia assured him. "Amanda has a background in environmental sustainability and has been pushing for greener initiatives across their properties. We've incorporated that into our strategy." "Good." Richard leaned back in his chair, studying her thoughtfully. "There's something else you should know about the Harringtons." The serious tone in his voice made Mia sit straighter. "What is it?" "Amanda and I have history." He delivered this information with careful neutrality. "We were engaged briefly 3 years ago. The relationship ended poorly." Mia absorbed this unexpected revelation. "I see. Will that affect our chances?" "It shouldn't. James values results over personal matters." Richard's fingers tapped a restless rhythm on his desk. "However, Amanda may be less objective. Why tell me this now? The presentation is hours away." Richard's gaze held hers steadily. "Because I need you to lead it without me." "What?" Mia couldn't hide her surprise. "But you've been involved in every aspect of planning. The client will expect you to be there. I've been called to an emergency board meeting in Chicago. I'm flying out within the hour." He pushed a folder across the desk toward her. "Everything you need to know about Preston's financials and expansion goals is in here. You're more than capable, Mia. I wouldn't entrust this to you otherwise." The vote of confidence both pleased and unsettled her. "You realize this puts enormous pressure on my first major presentation as creative director?" "I do." His expression softened marginally, "and I wouldn't ask if there were any alternative. The truth is, your concept is stronger than anything we've previously presented to Preston. Your team respects you, and you understand the client's needs better than anyone else in the department." Mia considered this, weighing the risk against the opportunity. "All right," she said finally. "I'll handle it." Relief flickered across his face. "Thank you. Vivian will attend for operational details, but creative direction is entirely your domain." As Mia rose to leave, Richard added, "About the other night." "It's forgotten," she interrupted quickly. Something like disappointment crossed his features. Of course, professional boundaries. Back in her office, Mia worked well past midnight, familiarizing herself with every detail in Richard's folder. By the time she finally left the building, Manhattan's streets had quieted, and her confidence in tomorrow's presentation had solidified into steely determination. Morning arrived with a text from Richard. "Trust your instincts. The Preston account is yours to win." The presentation room buzzed with nervous energy as Mia briefed her team one final time. "Remember, we're offering them more than a marketing strategy. We're providing a vision for their future," she emphasized, straightening her charcoal suit jacket. When Vivian escorted the Harringtons into the room precisely at 10 o'clock, Mia stepped forward with practiced poise. James Harrington, a silver-haired man with piercing eyes and an expensive watch, assessed her with obvious skepticism. "Ms. Bennett," he said, accepting her handshake. "I was expecting Richard Hayes." "Mr. Hayes sends his apologies. He was called to Chicago on urgent business," Mia replied smoothly. "I'm the creative director overseeing your account, and I assure you this presentation has his complete confidence." James's expression remained doubtful, but he nodded curtly before introducing his daughter. Amanda Harrington was strikingly elegant in a tailored navy dress, her blonde hair swept into an immaculate chignon. Her smile didn't reach her eyes as she clasped Mia's hand. "How interesting," she murmured. "Richard usually handles premium accounts personally. You must be very special." The subtle emphasis wasn't lost on Mia. "I simply have the expertise Preston Hotels requires," she responded evenly. "Shall we begin?" For the next hour, Mia guided the Harringtons through Everest's comprehensive strategy, from digital presence to experiential marketing. Despite Amanda's occasional cutting remarks and James's intimidating silence, Mia maintained her composure, addressing objections with data-driven responses and genuine passion for the concept. When she concluded, the room fell silent. James Harrington studied the projections one last time before clearing his throat. "Impressive work, Ms. Bennett. You've clearly done your homework on our market position." Relief washed through her. "Thank you, Mr. Harrington. However," he continued, "we'll need time to consider all our options. We'll contact you with our decision by week's end." As the meeting disbanded, Amanda lingered, waiting until they were alone before approaching Mia. "A word of advice," she said, her voice deceptively pleasant. "Richard Hayes has a pattern of elevating women professionally while pursuing them personally. When the inevitable crash occurs, guess which part of the relationship survives?" Mia kept her expression neutral. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Ms. Harrington, but my relationship with Mr. Hayes is strictly professional." Amanda's laugh held no warmth. "That's what I thought too, until I discovered he was more interested in my father's hotel chain than in me. Just be careful. Richard's charm is as calculated as everything else about him." The accusation lingered in Mia's mind long after the Harringtons departed. Though she tried to dismiss it as the bitterness of a former relationship, Amanda's warning had touched on her own unacknowledged concerns about Richard's interest in her. By evening, exhaustion had replaced the adrenaline of the presentation. Mia was packing up to leave when Vivian appeared at her door. "James Harrington just called," she announced without preamble. "They want a second presentation tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow?" Mia echoed in disbelief. "That's highly unusual." Apparently, Amanda had some concerns about the sustainability metrics. "James wants more concrete projections before making his decision." Vivian looked apologetic. "Richard's still in Chicago, so you'll need to handle this follow-up as well." After Vivian left, Mia called her team together for an emergency session. Hours passed as they refined projections and strengthened their environmental initiatives. By midnight, they had a compelling addendum to their original presentation. "Go home, everyone," Mia instructed her bleary-eyed team. "I'll make the final revisions and see you in the morning." Grace lingered after the others departed. "Something feels off about this," she said, perching on the edge of Mia's desk. "We've never had a client request a next-day follow-up before." "The Harringtons are thorough," Mia replied, though her own misgivings had been growing throughout the evening. "Maybe." Grace looked unconvinced. "Or maybe Amanda Harrington has personal reasons for making this difficult." Mia glanced up sharply. "What do you know?" Grace hesitated before answering. "Office rumors, mostly. Amanda and Richard were engaged until she allegedly discovered he'd initiated their relationship specifically to gain access to her father's business." She shrugged apologetically. "Probably gossip, but it aligns with what Amanda implied today," Mia finished quietly. Left alone in her office, Mia stared at the presentation on her screen, unable to focus. Had Richard manipulated her from the beginning? Their meeting at the crosswalk, had it truly been coincidence? Or had he orchestrated even that, recognizing an opportunity to charm his way into her confidence before the critical Preston pitch? The thought made her stomach twist with a combination of anger and embarrassment. If Amanda's insinuations were true, Richard Hayes was not the man Mia had believed him to be. Her phone chimed with an incoming text message from an unknown number. Be careful with Hayes. Check the original Preston proposal from 6 months ago. File room, cabinet 8, drawer 3. A friend. Curiosity overcame caution. The executive floor was deserted as Mia made her way to the file room, using her access card to enter the dimly lit space. Cabinet 8 yielded a thick folder labeled Preston Hotel's Initial Approach. What she found inside stole the breath from her lungs. The original proposal, dated 6 months earlier, contained a strategy remarkably similar to her own innovative concept, including the sustainability angle she'd believed was her unique contribution. More damning were the handwritten notes in what she now recognized as Richard's distinctive script, outlining a plan to approach Preston again after their initial rejection. One note in particular caught her eye. Find fresh face to present. JH responds to new perspectives. The implications were unmistakable. Richard hadn't valued her creativity or insight. He'd needed a fresh face to sell Preston on ideas they'd previously rejected. Their encounter at the crosswalk, his interest in her work, perhaps even his romantic overtures, all potentially calculated moves in a business strategy. As the pieces fell into place, Mia felt a cold fury replace her earlier confusion. Richard Hayes had played her expertly, using her ambition and attraction to serve his own ends. Tomorrow's presentation wouldn't just determine Preston Hotel's business, it would reveal whether she would allow herself to be a pawn in Richard's game. By dawn, Mia had made her decision. When her phone rang shortly after 6 a.m., she wasn't surprised to see Richard's name on the screen. I just landed, he said without preamble. Vivian told me about the second presentation. I'm heading straight to the office to join you. That won't be necessary, Mia replied, her voice carefully controlled. I've got everything under control. A pause. Mia, is everything all right? Perfectly. She took a steadying breath. I found the original Preston proposal, Richard. The one from 6 months ago. The silence that followed told her everything she needed to know. We'll discuss this after the presentation, he said finally, his tone unreadable. Don't do anything rash. I'm doing exactly what you hired me to do, Mia answered, presenting a compelling strategy to an important client. As she ended the call, Mia checked her reflection in her office window. The woman who gazed back at her looked different somehow, stronger perhaps, or simply wiser. Whatever happened next, she would face it on her own terms, not as Richard Hayes's carefully selected pawn. Richard arrived at Everest Media 20 minutes before the scheduled presentation, his usual immaculate appearance slightly disheveled from the overnight flight. He found Mia in the conference room, calmly arranging presentation materials while her team made final adjustments to the visual displays. We need to talk, he said quietly, drawing her aside. Mia met his gaze with cool professionalism. The Harringtons will be here in 15 minutes. Whatever you have to say can wait. It can't. His voice held an urgency she hadn't heard before. The file you found, it's not what you think. Really? Mia arched an eyebrow. Because it looks exactly like you recycled a rejected proposal and used me as a fresh face to sell it. Richard ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. That's not... He stopped, seemingly reconsidering his words. Yes, parts of the strategy are similar, but not for the reasons you're assuming. Before she could respond, Vivian appeared at the door. The Harringtons are early. They're heading up now. Perfect timing, Mia murmured to Richard. Looks like your explanation will have to wait. The tension in the room was palpable when James and Amanda Harrington entered. James seemed surprised to see Richard, while Amanda's lips curved into a knowing smile. Richard, she said, her tone falsely sweet. I thought you were in Chicago. I returned this morning, he replied evenly. I wouldn't miss this presentation. James Harrington looked between them with shrewd eyes before turning to Mia. Ms. Bennett, I understand you have additional sustainability projections for us? Yes, Mr. Harrington. Mia gestured toward the seats. If everyone's ready, we can begin. As the lights dimmed for the presentation, Mia felt a curious sense of calm descend. The betrayal she'd felt upon discovering the file had crystallized into something harder overnight: determination. Whatever game Richard was playing, she would not be its unwitting piece. "Before I share our enhanced sustainability metrics," she began, "I'd like to address something important." She met James Harrington's gaze directly. "In preparing for today, I discovered that Everest Media presented a similar proposal to Preston Hotels 6 months ago." The room went utterly still. From the corner of her eye, Mia saw Richard stiffen, while Amanda leaned forward with barely concealed satisfaction. "I believe in transparency," Mia continued steadily, "and I believe you deserve to know that while the core strategy remains similar, my team has substantially evolved and strengthened the approach based on Preston Hotel's changing market position and the growing demand for authentic sustainability in luxury travel." James Harrington's expression remained unreadable. "Go on." For the next 40 minutes, Mia guided the room through a presentation that differed significantly from what they had prepared the previous day. Instead of merely enhancing the original proposal, she had spent the night completely reimagining it, leveraging her team's strengths while addressing the fundamental weaknesses that had likely led to the proposal's initial rejection. When she concluded, even Amanda looked begrudgingly impressed. James Harrington cleared his throat. "Ms. Bennett, when you mentioned discovering our previous interaction with Everest, I expected excuses. Instead, you've shown remarkable adaptability." He glanced at Richard, a quality not everyone possesses. "The credit belongs to Ms. Bennett and her team," Richard said, surprising Mia with his sincerity. "Their vision for Preston Hotels exceeds anything we've previously conceived." James nodded thoughtfully. "I'd like to discuss specifics with Ms. Bennett alone, if possible." The request raised eyebrows around the room, but Richard agreed immediately. "Of course, we'll give you the space you need." As the others filed out, Richard paused beside Mia's chair. "Trust yourself," he murmured, so quietly only she could hear. "You've got this." Alone with James Harrington, Mia maintained her professional composure despite her racing thoughts. For 30 minutes they delved into budget allocations, implementation timelines, and measurement metrics. His questions were pointed but fair, and Mia found herself genuinely enjoying the challenge he presented. "One last thing, Ms. Bennett," he said as their discussion concluded. "My daughter believes Richard Hayes is using you to secure our business. Is there any truth to that concern?" The directness of the question caught Mia off guard. "Mr. Harrington, I can only speak to my own experiences and intentions. I believe in the strategy I've presented today, regardless of any personal dynamics within Everest Media." He studied her for a long moment before nodding. "Well answered. Too many people in this business forget that integrity matters." Rising from his seat, he extended his hand. "Preston Hotels would be pleased to work with Everest Media, with you as our primary contact." Joy surged through Mia as she accepted his handshake. "Thank you, Mr. Harrington. We won't disappoint you. I'm counting on that," he replied, with the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. "My assistant will contact you to formalize the details." When James Harrington left the conference room, Mia remained seated, allowing herself a moment to absorb what had just happened. She had secured the Preston account, her first major win as creative director, despite the complications Richard's actions had created. The door opened again, and Amanda Harrington stepped inside, her expression considerably less friendly than her father's had been. "Congratulations," she said, the word holding no warmth. "You managed to impress my father, which isn't easy." "Thank you," Mia replied cautiously. Amanda moved closer, elegant fingers trailing along the conference table's polished surface. "I wonder if you understand what you're getting into with Richard Hayes." "Ms. Harrington." "He'll charm you," Amanda continued as if Mia hadn't spoken. "Make you feel special, valued for your mind rather than just your appearance. That's his particular talent, seeing what people need and becoming exactly that." Her perfectly manicured hand stilled. "Until he gets what he wants." Mia met her gaze steadily. "With all due respect, your past with Richard has nothing to do with me or this account." "It has everything to do with you," Amanda countered, "because you're making the same mistake I did, believing he sees you as anything more than a means to an end." She moved toward the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. "The proposal you found, it wasn't rejected. I convinced my father to delay his decision because I discovered Richard had only pursued me to secure Preston's business." The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving Mia alone with this final devastating revelation. She found Richard waiting in her office, standing at the window with his back to the door. He turned when she entered, his expression guarded. "Well, did we get the account?" "We did," Mia confirmed, setting her materials on the desk between them. "No thanks to your manipulations?" Richard exhaled slowly. "Mia, I need you to listen." "No," she interrupted, anger finally breaking through her professional veneer. "I need you to listen. Did you orchestrate our meeting at the crosswalk? Was that all part of your plan to win Preston Hotels?" "Of course not," he said, looking genuinely startled by the accusation. "That was completely coincidental." "Then explain the file I found. Explain why Amanda believes you only dated her to secure her father's business. Explain why your handwritten notes specifically mentioned finding a fresh face to present to James Harrington." Richard's shoulders sagged slightly as he sank into the chair across from her desk. "I can see how this looks," he admitted, "but it's not what you think, or what Amanda believes." "Then what is it?" "6 months ago, we presented a strong proposal to Preston Hotels," he began, holding her gaze. "James seemed impressed, but suddenly withdrew from negotiations after Amanda and I ended our engagement. At the time, I believed it was simply fallout from our personal relationship." Mia crossed her arms. "And when did you start dating Amanda?" "We met at an industry conference nearly a year ago," Richard said, "before Preston Hotels was ever on Everest's radar. The relationship progressed naturally. At least I thought it did." He rubbed his temples. "When the engagement ended, Amanda accused me of using her to get to her father. It wasn't true, but she convinced James it was. And the note about finding a fresh face. Written after their rejection, yes," he acknowledged, "but not as some manipulative scheme. James Harrington is known for valuing new perspectives and diverse voices. I realized our original team, all men, mostly veterans of the industry, hadn't connected with his vision for Preston's future." Mia processed this explanation, searching his face for signs of deception. "So hiring me was part of a strategy to win Preston back?" "No," Richard replied firmly. "I hired you because your portfolio was exceptional and your interview with the board was impressive. The Preston account wasn't even on the table when we made you the offer." He leaned forward. "When you spilled coffee on your blouse that morning, I genuinely didn't know who you were. I was just trying to help. And proposing drinks at the Meridian? Was that also just innocent helpfulness?" A hint of his usual confidence returned. "That was entirely selfish. I was attracted to you, both your boldness and your talent. The fact that you turned out to be my new creative director was complicated." "Complicated," Mia repeated, the word laden with understatement. "I'm not perfect, Mia," Richard said quietly. "I've made mistakes in my personal life, and Amanda has legitimate reasons to be angry with me. But I never used you or manipulated you to win Preston Hotels." Mia studied him, weighing his words against Amanda's accusations and her own instincts. "Even if I believe you, this doesn't change the fact that we shouldn't be anything other than colleagues." "Because of the power imbalance?" he asked. "Partly," she admitted, "and partly because I've worked too hard to have my accomplishments attributed to anything other than my own abilities." Richard nodded slowly. "I understand." He rose to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, what you did in that presentation today, completely reimagining our approach overnight, standing your ground with the Harringtons, that was all you, Mia, and it was remarkable." The sincerity in his voice made something warm unfurl in her chest, but she tamped it down. "Thank you. Now, if you don't mind, I have a team to congratulate and a major new account to implement." 3 months passed in a whirlwind of activity as Mia led the Preston Hotels launch. The campaign exceeded expectations, with early metrics showing significant growth in both bookings and social engagement. James Harrington became one of Everest's most vocal advocates, opening doors to other luxury hospitality clients. Throughout this period, Richard maintained a respectful professional distance. Their interactions were cordial but limited, focused entirely on business matters. If others noticed the careful boundaries between them, no one mentioned it. By summer, Mia's department had expanded to handle their growing client roster, and her position at Everest was unquestionably secure. The office whispers about her rapid rise had faded, replaced by genuine respect for her creative vision and leadership. On the evening of the Preston campaign's official quarterly review, a resounding success by every metric, Mia found herself alone in the office, savoring the quiet satisfaction of achievement. A knock at her door broke the silence. Richard stood in the doorway, looking somewhat different than she remembered. more relaxed perhaps in jeans and a casual button-down shirt rather than his usual tailored suit. "Congratulations," he said. "The quarterly numbers are exceptional." "Thank you." Mia leaned back in her chair. The team really delivered. They had excellent leadership. He hesitated, then stepped fully into her office. "I have something to tell you. I've decided to step back from day-to-day operations at Everest." Surprise made Mia sit up straighter. "What? Why?" "Several reasons," he replied, settling into the chair across from her. "Primarily, I'm launching a literacy foundation that will require significant attention. But also," he met her eyes directly, "I've realized that my presence here creates complications for certain professional relationships that I value." Understanding dawned. "Richard, you don't need to leave your company because of our situation." "I'm not leaving entirely," he clarified. "I'll remain on the board, but Vivian will be stepping up as CEO. The announcement goes out tomorrow." Mia absorbed this unexpected development. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything." Richard smiled slightly. "I just wanted you to hear it from me first." As he turned to leave, Mia found herself speaking without forethought. "Wait." When he paused, she continued, "Remember that morning at the crosswalk, when I said something completely impulsive?" "I'm unlikely to forget it," he replied, amusement warming his voice. Mia stood moving around her desk until only a few feet separated them. "What if I told you I'd like to try being impulsive again?" Richard's expression shifted from surprise to cautious hope. "I'd say that sounds intriguing." "Have dinner with me," she said simply, "not as my boss or the founder of Everest Media, just as Richard, the man who once lent me his handkerchief when I needed it." He studied her face. "What changed your mind?" "These past months," Mia explained. "Watching you respect the boundaries I set. Seeing how you empowered my team without interference, learning that you're stepping back from your company partly because of your principles." She took a deep breath, "and maybe realizing that some complications are worth navigating." "Dinner, then," Richard agreed, a genuine smile transforming his features. "Though I should warn you, if your goal is to eliminate power imbalances, you should know that you've held all the power since the moment you first told me to kiss you, like I meant it." Mia laughed, the sound free and unrestrained in a way it hadn't been in months. "In that case, I have just one more impulsive suggestion." "I'm listening." She stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes. "Maybe we should find out if you can." This time, when Richard's lips met hers, there were no interruptions, only the surprising discovery that sometimes the most calculated risk is allowing oneself to follow an unexpected path. His kiss was both gentle and certain, the touch of someone who had waited patiently for something he truly valued. When they finally parted, Mia smiled up at him. "Worth the wait?" "Absolutely," Richard murmured against her hair, "though I think we're just beginning." 6 months later, as Mia stood beside Richard at the opening of his Literacy Foundation's first community center, she reflected on how thoroughly her life had transformed since that fateful morning at the crosswalk. Her career had flourished, with Everest's creative department now recognized as an industry leader under her direction. Meanwhile, her relationship with Richard had deepened into something neither of them had anticipated, a partnership based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine connection. "Penny for your thoughts?" Richard asked, his hand warm against the small of her back. Mia leaned into his touch. "I was just thinking about impulses and calculations," she replied. "And how sometimes the best decisions look like mistakes at first glance." His smile, the real one with the dimple she'd first noticed that morning, appeared. "Speaking of impulses," he said, leading her away from the crowded reception, "there's something I've been wanting to ask you." As Richard took her hand in his, Mia realized that some questions, like some kisses, were worth waiting for, especially when they led to beginnings rather than endings. And whatever he asked next, her answer would be the easiest decision she'd ever made.